Welcome to this WiseOwl Excel VBA tutorial. In this video we'll explain how to apply DASL filters to Outlook items. We'll remind you first of all how you loop through the list of all inbox items and then how you can apply the restrict method to filter that list of items. We'll quickly compare JET filter syntax with DASL filter syntax to show you how much more complex the DASL filters are. We'll talk briefly about how you find the schema and property names for your DASL filters, showing you some documentation available on the Microsoft website. We'll then build some simple filters and combine filters using logical operators such as AND and OR. We'll then show you how you can cheat effectively and copy your filter strings from an Outlook dialog box so that you don't have to worry too much about how to construct your filters. And then we'll talk specifically about how you filter dates, focusing on how you convert dates to UTC time in case you're not living in that time zone. So let's get started. Let's start by quickly writing the basic code needed to loop through the items of the Outlook inbox. From a blank workbook, I can head straight to the Visual Basic Editor and then insert a new module into the project. We can create a new subroutine. I'll call mine Use DASL Filters. We'll need to set a reference to the Outlook object library just to make our life easier when we're writing the code, so we can head to Tools, References, and then if we scroll through the list of references available and find Microsoft Outlook, in my case it's Outlook 16. A little bit further, there we go. So check a reference or check the box next to that library, and then when you've done that you can click OK. There are several variables we'll declare at this point. Let's say dim.ol as an Outlook.application. And then we'll say dim.ns as an Outlook.namespace. Then we'll also have dim.fol as an Outlook.folder. And then we'll have a variable called I, which will represent an individual item within the folder we'll capture a reference to. We'll set the type of that one to a generic object. And then we'll also have dim.mi as an Outlook.mail item. We can then set OL to be equal to a new Outlook.application. And then we can set our namespace variable, setNS, to be equal to OL.getNamespace, and then the namespace we'll use is mappy. We can then capture a reference to the inbox folder by saying setFOL equals ns.getDefaultFolder, and then in a set of parentheses we can choose the OL folder inbox constant. What we'll then do is loop through all of the items in that folder by using our generic I variable. So we can say for each I in fol.items, I'll give myself a few blank lines and then say next I. What we can then do is check that the item we're looking at has a class of OL mail. So I'm going to say if I.class equals OL mail, then I would like to set my mi variable to be equal to I, and then a few blank lines, say end if, and just to demonstrate some basic things or show some basic information about the mail items, let's have a debug.print mi.sendername, followed by a comma, then mi.received-time, followed by another comma, maybe mi.importance, mi.size, let's also go with subject as well, I suppose. Okay, so having done all that, I'm going to display the immediate window, view immediate window, and then if I just give this routine a quick test by running it, there we go, there's some basic information about the emails currently sitting in my inbox. What I'd like to do next is apply the restrict method to the items collection to filter the list of items we're looking at in the inbox. So we can apply the restrict method directly to the items collection. And if you watched the previous video in the series, you'll be familiar with the restrict method already. It requires a string of text to apply a filter to the items. To make this work, what we'll do is we'll declare a variable called filter string. So in fact, I'm going to pass that in right now. Let's say, let's pretend I've created it already. So I'm going to say restrict using the filter string, and that will return a smaller list of items. To construct our filter string, let's declare a new variable. So I'm going to say dim filter string as string. And then somewhere else in this procedure, we can set what text is contained in the filter string by saying filter string equals, and then insert a string in a pair of double quotes. Now there are two main languages you can use to write filters in Outlook. In the previous video we used the JET syntax, which is a very simple type of filter, very similar to what you might find yourself writing in, for example, a Microsoft Access query. Just to demonstrate that and remind you of how simple that was, let's try to filter our list of items to find only emails whose sender name is equal to Microsoft. So if we know the name of a property in Outlook, so for example sender name, just like we've used in our debug.print statement, we can write the name of that field or the name of that property in a set of square brackets, and then we can check if that is equal to a particular value. For a string of text I need to enclose this in a set of single quotes, so for example I can go for Microsoft. If I then simply clear the contents of the immediate window and then I run my subroutine again, this time I'll find just one single email gets returned. I've had one email from Microsoft currently sitting in my inbox. Now while the JET filter syntax is quite simple to write, it is a little bit limited in terms of the searches it can perform. So for example, if I wanted to find a list of emails sent from senders whose name contained the word Microsoft rather than was exactly equal to Microsoft, I couldn't do that using a JET filter. So this is the point we need to move into using DASL filters. Just to show you some basic documentation you might find useful for further reading, there are several pages available on the Microsoft Docs website. So for example, the page on generically filtering items in Outlook. It gives you a quick list of the methods in Outlook VBA which support both the JET filter syntax and the DASL filter syntax. There are some specific links a little further down which show you how to use those filters for particular data types such as strings and dates and times, etc. Those extra pages of filter syntax show you some examples of using both JET and DASL filters. So you can see here there's some simple JET filters used, and then a bit further down here's an example of a DASL filter, which, as you'll agree already, looks a little bit more complicated, but we'll explain this as we go along. For a bit of history, if you're interested, there's a nice extract from a book on Outlook. So Chapter 11, Searching Outlook Data. This is again on the Microsoft Docs website. It's quite a long article, but it gives you a bit of background about the various query languages in Outlook and tells you what DASL actually stands for. Not that that's particularly useful or interesting. And then there's one extra page that I've got up here as well, which we're going to use for reference shortly to find the namespaces we need to access for our DASL filters. So yeah, make sure you make a note of these little URLs so you can get back to these pages later on for reference. For now, what we'll do is we'll switch back to the Visual Basic Editor, and then we'll change our existing filter to use the DASL filter syntax rather than just JET. Each DASL filter has to begin with a specific phrase at SQL equals. That's case sensitive as well. It must be capital SQL and not lowercase. What we then need to do is pass in the name of the schema containing the name of the property that we're searching for. So whereas in JET it was as simple as just writing the property name in some square brackets, with DASL filters that's a little more complex. The names of the schemas you can use are quite long-winded in and of themselves, so you can see this referencing properties by namespace. This gives you a list of the available schemas and what you can apply them to. You don't necessarily want to be typing these out longhand, but you can of course just copy and paste these from the web page. In fact, that's exactly what I'm going to do right now. So I'm going to copy this one, URN schemas HTTP mail. So I'm going to copy that one first and then head back to the Visual Basic Editor, and then I can paste that in. After the name of the schema, that's where you put in the name of the property. Now, annoyingly, the names of the properties in the schemas don't necessarily match the VBA properties. So whereas earlier with the JET filter, we could use sender name, for this particular schema, I need to use a property name called from name. And again, this is case sensitive. It's got to be in lowercase for this particular property. I can't mix and match my casing. It's got to be exact. Another somewhat annoying thing about about referencing these schemas is that within the filter string, the schema name has to be contained within double quotes. Now that's a little awkward to do, because if I try to put a double quote and a double quote around the schema name like so, if I move away from this line, that generates a syntax error. VBA is reading this as one string which starts and ends here, and then some random unassociated text, and then another empty string at the end. So syntactically it's completely invalid in VBA terms. There are several approaches to concatenating or putting in a single double quote within a string in VBA. The simplest by far is just to double up your double quotes. If I put this pair of double quotes on either side of the schema name, VBA will read this as a single set of double quotes enclosing the schema name. So that's the first awkward hurdle to overcome. There are other approaches which allow you to concatenate this double quote character, but this is a simple one that we'll use for now. What I'd then like to do is check if that is now equal to the word Microsoft. So let's check first of all if that's equal to Microsoft. So we'll replicate the original filter we used in the jet syntax. So equals, and then Microsoft, the string, needs to be contained in single quotes. So having done that, and I appreciate that's a little awkward, I'm just going to clear the contents of the immediate window, and then I'll run this subroutine again just to prove that we get the same results using the DASL filter as we got using the jet filter earlier. So of course, if this was what you were trying to do, you were trying to search for a specific sender name, then the jet filter syntax is far, far simpler. But the beauty of using DASL is it gives us access to much more sophisticated filters. So rather than using the equals operator here, what I'm going to do is replace this with the like operator. And if you've used any SQL before, you'll be familiar with the like operator, and you'll be familiar with the use of wildcard characters. So for example, if I wanted to find any emails whose sender name, or from name I should say, begins with the word Microsoft, followed by any number of any characters, within the set of single quotes after the word Microsoft, I can enter a percentage symbol, which is the wildcard character for SQL, the wildcard which represents any number of any characters. So if I just clear the contents of the immediate window again, and then I run the procedure again, this time I get multiple emails. I've got one from Microsoft Visual Studio, the original one from just Microsoft, and then one from Microsoft Partner Network UK team. It's possible that the word Microsoft might sit somewhere within the string. It might not just appear at the very beginning of the string. So you can use multiple wildcard characters if I put another percentage symbol in front of the word Microsoft. What this will now do, if I clear the contents of the immediate window, is find any emails whose from name contains Microsoft. If I run this one again, I think I just get the exact same list of results. I don't actually have any emails whose sender contains Microsoft. They all begin with Microsoft. But the principle is still sound. You can search for words within a string using the wildcard characters on either side of the exact text. You can combine multiple filters in the same DASL filter string by using the and or logical operators. So for example, if I wanted to see any emails sent from Microsoft and which contained the word inspire in the subject, I could add another filter to the same filter string using the and operator. I might find it useful at this point to break this statement across multiple lines. So what I'm going to do is use the ampersand and then the continuation characters, space and underscore, to continue writing this new condition on the next line. So in another set of double quotes, I can then write the word and. I want to match both criteria. And then the simplest thing I think to do here is copy and paste the schema name, and then also the exact match I'm looking for. So I can copy and paste all of that and then just paste that in at the end. Okay, so the property name is different this time. I'm not looking for the from name this time. This time I'm looking for the subject, and this is one situation where the VBA property name is the same as the DASL property name, so I can go for subject, and then I want to look for the word inspire inside that property. So I'll change the word Microsoft to the word inspire, and I'll spell that properly. Okay, so having done that, if I clear the contents of the immediate window and then run the subroutine again, this time I'll find any emails sent from Microsoft, including details about the Inspire event or whatever. I have no idea what Inspire actually is. I just use that as a simple demonstration. So there we go. That's how you get multiple filters to work using the AND operator. At this point, the biggest question you probably have is how on earth do you know which schema name and which property name to use to get your filter to work properly? It's not easy to find documentation about this, but there is a quick and simple way you can find out exactly which schema name and property name to use by building a filter up using Microsoft Outlook. I'm going to switch back into Microsoft Outlook at this point. And it used to be possible to do this in previous versions of Outlook. I'm using Outlook 2016, part of an Office 365 subscription. It used to be possible to do this by creating a search first of all. So if I click in my search box here and then went for the Search Tools button on the Search Tools toolbar, I can look for an advanced find, and then in this dialog box you can build up complex searches, complex finds. And there used to be a little SQL tab on this dialog box that you could use to just copy and paste the filter you needed. I can't remember which version of Outlook that disappeared in, but anyway, you can still find it, it's just not in the obvious place anymore. So I'm just going to close my search box. In this version of Outlook, what I can do is head to the View tab in the ribbon. Then I can click on the View Settings button on the toolbar, and then I can click on the Filter button in the dialog box that appears, and then I can find my little SQL tab here. So the wonderful thing here is whatever filters I build up on the other tabs of the dialog box, the SQL code will be written out exactly for me in this little dialog here. So just to demonstrate something we've already done, or something similar to what we've already done, let's head to the Advanced tab, and I'm going to build up a basic filter using the field drop-down list. I'll go for address fields from, and then I'll go for conditions where it contains. I've also got things like is exactly equal to or doesn't contain, etc. But I'm going to go with contains. Then I'm going to type in the word Andy. If I then choose to add that filter to the list, I can then click on the SQL page of the dialog box, and as if by magic, I get my exact filter written out for me, just in the same way we've just seen in the VB editor. What I can then do is select that, except I can't at this point because it's all grayed out, so I can check the box at the bottom to allow me to edit that code. Then I can select, copy it to the clipboard with Ctrl and C, head back to the Visual Basic Editor, and then let's just replace our existing filter string with this brand new one. So I'm just going to paste into that set of double quotes the exact string I've just pasted. Oops, I shouldn't have gotten rid of the @SQL part. So excuse me, let me just write that in again. @SQL equals. Now again, you'll need to make sure you double up the double quotes. If I click away, that provides me with a syntax error. So I'll need to make sure I double up the double quotes surrounding the schema name and property name. And then if I clear the contents of the immediate window and then run the subroutine again, I'll now get emails from Andy. At this point, there isn't really anything more I need to teach you about building the syntax for a DASL filter, because you can use the dialog box I've just shown you to build any filter you like. So let's just see a couple more quick examples. If I wanted to say, let's say I wanted to search the body text of an email. If I switch back to my Outlook application, and then let's just cancel the filter I've added, and then reopen the filter dialog box again. If I wanted to search in the body text, I have a couple of techniques I can use here. I can use the basic filters and search in the subject field and message body. I can also just go straight to the Advanced tab and search just within the body text of the email. So the field I would need to use for this, I would use frequently used fields and then look for the message property. That's the text of the message body. And then I could check if that contains, what could it contain? Let's say it contains the word video. And then if I add this one to the list and have a look in the SQL page, you can see this one uses the text description property from the same schema we've been using for the from name and the subject. So if I wanted to make this one work, I can copy this and then head back to the Visual Basic Editor. Let's make sure I don't delete my SQL prefix this time. Then I can paste in what I've just copied from the editor. I need to make sure I double up the double quotes again. Then I can clear the contents of the immediate window and then run the subroutine again. And then I'll get all the emails that have the word video in their body text. You can construct more complicated filters using combinations of criteria. So again, if I switch back to the Outlook window, and I'll just cancel the filter dialog box and then open it up again to build a new one. Let's say I wanted to search for the word video in the subject and the body text. Rather than build my advanced filter, I can use the basic filtering tools here. So I'm going to type in the word video in the search for the words box, and then from the drop-down list I can choose subject field and message body. If I then just have a look at the SQL page, I'll see that it's already constructed a quite complicated filter string for me. It uses a different schema this time. It's using hexadecimal codes for referencing the individual properties within a different schema altogether. Again, you can reference or have a look at the names of these schemas. So it's using this one, the prop tag schema in the mappy namespace. Again, you can have a quick read about how these work in this page of the dialog box. The great thing is you don't really need to know an awful lot about how they work in order to build them. You can just use this dialog box to construct it and then just copy and paste it directly into your VBA code. So were I to copy this one and then let's head back to the Visual Basic Editor. Let's see if I can get this one to work easily enough. Let's get rid of my existing filter and then paste that in. A little bit more to do with the double quotes this time. So I've got a couple of double quotes. Let's just see. Let's just move that one. So at SQL equals, and then the schema name needs to go in double quotes. And as I've referenced the schema name twice, I will need to double up those again. So let's have a quick look. There we go. And then if I clear the content of the immediate window and then run the subroutine again, I'll get all of the emails containing videos in either the body or the subject. One other great thing about using DASL filters is it allows you to access some of Outlook's filter macros. This is particularly handy when you come to filtering dates. So for example, just to show you how those work, if I switch back to Outlook and again cancel the dialog box and then open the filter dialog again, if I have a really quick look, let's build this up actually on the advanced page. If I go to the advanced page first and then from the field list go for date and time fields and then choose received. Now the conditions I can apply here, I can go for any time of course, but I've also got access to some quick simple macros that allow me to search for things received yesterday or within the last 7 days or within the last week, etc, etc. So if I pick one of these, let's go for the last 7 days, for example, and then I can simply add that one to the list. If I go to the SQL page now, you can see that it's referenced a macro using a percentage symbol at the beginning, so percentage last 7 days, and then it's put in the name of the schema in some double quotes and then closed that with a percentage symbol at the end. So these percentage symbols aren't the same as wildcards used in a string comparison. These percentage symbols here are used to enclose a macro. Let's copy that and then head back to the Visual Basic Editor and then let us just change our code again. So I'll get rid of my existing filter and then I can paste in what I've just copied, and then I'll need to double up the double quotes around the schema name once more. So having done that, if I were to clear the contents of the immediate window and then run the subroutine again, that will return for me all of the emails I currently have in my inbox received in the past 7 days. You can also apply date filters using explicit dates and times. So let's say, for example, I wanted to filter my list to show only those emails that I received since midday on the 29th of May 2019. So back in the filter dialog box, let's just cancel that one and open the dialog again. And then I can head to the advanced tab and choose field, date time fields received. And then rather than any time, I can go with on or after. And then for the value, I can enter 29/05/2019. You can use your own regional date format for that if you prefer month, day, year, or you can also say, for example, 29 May 2019 if you prefer, and then the time in hours and minutes, so 12:00. If I add that one to the list and have a look at the SQL page and then check the box so I can copy and paste this code, you'll see that the date format has changed. Even though I typed it in the longhand version, it's changed anyway to my regional settings. So at this point I can just copy and paste this filter and then head back to my VB editor and get this pasted in just after my @SQL equals, double up the double quotes again, and then if I clear the contents of the immediate window and then run the subroutine, I'll get all the emails released since midday or received since midday on the 29th of May. One thing you do need to be quite careful of when entering an explicit date like this is what time zone you're running your code in. Now with jet filters, if I just quickly switch to this page here about filtering items using a date-time comparison, time zones used in comparisons, there's a little section here which describes it. Jet filters use the local date-time values, but DASL filters always perform their comparisons using UTC or GMT. If you prefer, but coordinated universal time. So if you've written that date into your code and you're 8 hours ahead or 8 hours behind, that date and time is not exactly what you think it is, or at least the DASL filter doesn't treat it as such. Now there is a little suggestion, a quite a bizarre suggestion of how to perform the conversion to UTC from whatever date time you enter locally. The exact code to do it is shown down here. It uses a slightly odd method. What it does, it creates a dummy mail item object, which allows you to access the property accessor property, and that provides you with access to a local time to UTC method. So just to demonstrate how that works, what we can do is head back to the Visual Basic Editor. And then what I'm going to do is declare a new mail item variable, a dummy mail item. So let's declare this at the end of our variable list, dim DMI as a dummy, as outlook.maileitem. We'll also declare a variable which will hold the converted to UTC date. So let's say let's call it UTC date as date. Then at some point we'll need to construct or create our new dummy mail item. Let's do this just above our filter string. Let's say set DMI equals ol.createItem, open some parentheses and go for an ol mail item. We can then use the mail item to populate the UTC date variable. So let's say UTC date equals dmi.propertyAccessor.local time to UTC. I can then open some parentheses and I can pass in the date that I want to convert into UTC time. Now I can pass this in as a date value, or I can pass it in as a string that will be implicitly converted into a date. So what I'm going to do is pass this in as a string to make it as unambiguous as possible. I'll type in the exact month name, so 29 May 2019, followed by a space and then 12:00. What I'll now need to do is construct a filter string which reads the contents of that variable, formats it in the appropriate way, and then concatenates it into the filter string. So let's just remove the explicit date we've put in there, and then I can replace that with some double quotes so I can split out those two parts of the query string, or the filter string. Then I can concatenate these two bits together, and in between those ampersands, those concatenation symbols, I want to format the UTC date into some kind of intelligible date format. So I'm going to use the format function to do that. I'll say format UTC date followed by a comma, and then my format string, I'll use 2 Ds for the number of the day of the month. Then I'll use 3 Ms for the short month name, Jan, Feb, etc. Then I'll use 4 Ys for the full year, a couple of H's for the hours, a colon, and a couple of M's for minutes. VBA isn't case sensitive when it comes to date formats, so you may be familiar with in SQL, for instance, using capital M's for months and lowercase m's for minutes. It doesn't matter in VBA. VBA will correctly interpret whether this is a month or a minute. You can distinguish between months and minutes by using N for minutes if you prefer, but it doesn't really matter in this case. It would have worked in any version. In fact, let me just prove that by switching this back to its original format. Okay, so having done all that, if I clear the contents of the immediate window and then I were to run this subroutine once more, I won't see any difference, of course, because I'm living in UTC time anyway. My results aren't any different, but you may well see some differences if you're living in a different time zone when you convert to UTC time. Okay, so there's some basic information about constructing DASL filters to filter Outlook items. Hopefully you'll agree that it's all relatively straightforward once you learn about how to display the filter dialog box and then construct your filters and simply copy and paste the code into your VBA procedures. Don't forget you've got all this access to all this help information, all these extra documents you can read for further information if you're desperately interested in the history of filtering stuff in Outlook. There's a great article about that there. Otherwise, hopefully you'll find some use for the techniques covered in this video. Thanks for watching. See you next time.